Right, good morning, everyone. Boker Tov. Great to see everyone this morning. Yeshikoach for being here this morning. The shir is dedicated to Eloi Nishmas, Miriam Bas Avram, Alav Shalom, V'Shem Tov Ben Shlomo, Zichronu Livracha, and we thank our sponsor, and it should be an Eloi Neshama. Okay, so we have the schus, we have the honor this morning to continue our learning together of Rav Kook. Great to see everybody this morning. And we're studying a special work of Rav Kook, one of his Sfarim. He himself did not write the Sefer. It was compiled by his son, Ratzvi Yehuda Kook. It's about Midot. It's about character traits and improving character traits. The first few weeks, we studied the topic of Ahava, which is love. We looked at love of OUisrael, love of the world, love of our fellow Jew. And now we're turning to the next topic, which is the topic of Emunah. What's interesting about the book is that the book goes in alphabetical order. So we have Ahava, and the next topic in the topic of character traits is Emunah, is faith in God. And I think it's such a beautiful topic, and a topic that all of us think about. All of us can use, I know for myself, a chizuk in this area as well. So let's begin in the following way. And I'll begin really with the way that Rabbi Soloveitchik would talk about how we learn about Judaism, how we learn Torah, how we learn about our faith. How is it that we learn about these character traits? Essentially, Rabbi Soloveitchik says it's something that is a Masorah, it's something that's passed down, it's something that we learn. We learn it from our parents, we learn it from our grandparents, we learn it from teachers who teach us about Emunah, about faith. And I think that's one way of thinking about where faith comes from, right? How do we develop faith in God? Emunah, faith in God, deep faith in God. How do we develop that? Again, one way of developing it, and again, I think about the world of and the teachings of Rabbi Soloveitchik. I think that Rabbi Soloveitchik would say it's something that we pass down. It's something that we receive from great teachers, from rabbis, if we're blessed, from our parents, from grandparents, great-grandparents. And that's something that is passed down one generation to the next. Rav Kook has another perspective. I would say he doesn't disagree with that, but he adds something else, which is more of a mystical or spiritual idea, and that's where I want to begin this morning. And he writes the following, and here we are, taking a passage from the book Midot Haraya, the section of Emunah, and it's the 10th piece in Emunah. It's number 1. You're seeing a number 1 on the top of your page, and then it's a number 1 or the letter Yud. And now we're reading the words of Rav Kook. Where does Emunah stem from? Where's the root of faith in our lives? Emunah Elokit Hagdolah, the great faith that we have in God, Asher Belev Yisrael, that's found in the heart of a Jew. Ein la erech velo dugma. There's no way of there's no end to the value, the worth of that emunah. V'lo dugma v'lo mashal. There's nothing quite like it in the world, the way that a Jew and the way that the Jewish people have faith in God. Ve'afilu ha'apikoros ha'yisraelit. And even somebody who is an apikoros, somebody who rejects the idea of believing in God, he meleah emunah. That person, says Rav Kook, is really filled with faith as well. Meleah emunah kedusha harbe yoter, even more so, mikol ha'emunot shel kol hagoyim kulam. If you look at the faith of other nations, yes, they have faith, but it's not compared to the faith of a Jew. And he says it's not even compared to the faith of somebody who is rebelling against God. That Jew has a great faith in God as well. Maybe they're rebelling because they're looking for something deeper. You know, I remember Rabbi Shlomo Carlebach, you know the name Shlomo Carlebach. He says, why is it that so many Jews, he was talking about the American scene in the 60s and the 70s. Everybody know Shlomo Carlebach, of course. So he said, why is it that Jews are not coming to shul? Like, why is it that he's you have the what they used to call a 3-day-a-year Jews. They would come on Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur. So many Jews that would never step foot. So his answer was, he said, you know why they're not coming to shul? Because they're looking for something so much deeper than what the shul is offering them. Right? They're coming to shul, and they have a rabbi that's giving a sermon. They have a cantor who's singing, and they don't want that. They want depth. They want the real thing. Right? They want to feel close to Hashem. They want deep Judaism. So that was his answer. And to some degree, I think that's what Rav Kook is saying here as well. Even the apikoros, what we might call the apikoros, that person is looking for great depth. and a closeness with God. And even though the Apikoros might be teaching or believing in things that are considered to be kalud rosh, lightheaded, the shal kfira, and that which appears to be rejection of God, bitochiot haneshama, in the very essence of the soul, yesh or Elokim, there is a light of God, shel dveikut, that every Jew wants that connection and has that connection with God, v'shel tzimaon lelokim chayim, and they actually have, every Jew has a great thirst, a tzimaon, for the living God, kel Elokei Yisrael, ad l'chidei misirut nefesh, to such a degree that even a Jew that at times says they're not a religious Jew, observant Jew, maybe even what we might call a kofar, that there are situations where that person would be willing to give their life for Judaism and for God. Okay, so that is the opening statement of Rav Kook. He now continues and quotes from the following Gemara. The Gemara says, "Vayarach et reach begadav, al tikrei begadav ela bogdav." It's a Gemara in Sanhedrin, which we're going to see in just a moment. The Gemara in Sanhedrin, this is describing the story of Yitzchak, who is giving a blessing, and we're going to read this in a few weeks in the Torah, the famous story. He's in his tent, and he wants to give the blessing to Esav, to his son Esav. And we know that Yaakov makes his way in. He's wearing the clothing of Esav. And according to Gemara, he smells the clothing. That's what the pasuk says. The pasuk says, "Vayarach et reach begadav." He smelled the clothing, and he smelled that was Esav's clothing that he was wearing. And here the Gemara says something that is a bit surprising. And it says, "Al tikrei bigadav." Don't read the word bigadav. That's one way of interpreting clothing, but read it ella bogdav. Now, what does bogdav mean? One that is rejecting, one who is rebelling. In other words, that Yitzchak recognized that he knew that Esav was rebelling. That's what the Gemara says. It wasn't just bigadav, it was bogdav, that he sensed, that he knew about Esav, that he was rebelling. But even though he was rebelling, he wanted to give him the blessing. Look at what the Gemara says. And here again, Rav Kook is citing from the Gemara. This is just a teaching from the Gemara. This Gemara that's found in Sanhedrin Lamed Zayin, Daf Lamed Zayin. And actually the opening line, I added one more line, is a line that many of us, I think all of us here, are going to be familiar with. It's a teaching of Reish Lakish. Reish Lakish Amar Mehacha. He says, look at the following verse, a verse in Shir Hashirim. Kepelach harimon rakatech. Your temple, your Beit HaMikdash, is like a pomegranate that is split open. Okay, that's the pasuk in Shir Hashirim. Here's the line that I think all of us are familiar with to some degree. Afilu rekanin shebach melein mitzvot kirimon. What does Reish Lakish teach? That every single Jew, even though they may appear that they do not have mitzvot, that they are not saturated, they're not filled with mitzvot, they are melein mitzvot kirimon. They are filled with mitzvot like a pomegranate. And we're all familiar with this, right? The Rosh Hashanah time of the pomegranate, what it represents. And it represents, says Reish Lakish, it represents that every single Jew, even a Jew that we might call the Apikoros, a Jew that is distant from Judaism, that Jew has a great yearning for God. The neshama within the neshama of every Jew is a dveikut, is a closeness and a yearning and a belief in Hashem. Every Jew has that. That's what Reish Lakish teaches. And then the next statement in the Gemara is the statement that Rav Kook cites. Rav Zera Amar Mehacha, that we can learn this teaching from the following. Vayarach et reach begadav. That Yitzchak, he smelled the fragrance or the stench of the clothing of Esav. Says the Gemara, Al tikrei begadav. Don't read the verse that he smelled the clothing, ela bogadav. Rather, that he was a traitor. That Esav was a traitor, that he was rejecting a Jewish life, a life of belief in God. But what do we see from this Gemara? That Yitzchak wanted to give him the blessing, that he saw in him, that he still had a soul that had a desire to be close to God. And I'm just reading the note in the Gemara, meaning that even traitors and sinners among the Jewish people have qualities as the smell of a field that the Lord has blessed. Okay, so that is proof number one, or a proof text for Rav Kook, the idea of every soul of the Jewish people, that they have the Emunah within, every soul's embedded, a faith in God and longing for God. And then he brings another example as well. Kegon Yakim Ish Tzirorot V'Yosei Meshuta. And the story of these two individuals, and I'm sure you've never heard these names. I never heard these names either. These two individuals that are brought in a medrash that's found in Bereshis Rabbah. Sheheru et hatzafun bilvavam, that they showed that which was really hidden in their heart, b'misirut nefesh nifla'ah, with an amazing misirus nefesh, that they were willing to give their life. Umasha haya besof haya gam ken b'tchila. And what came out at the end was really there the entire time. Ela shekisa oto azuma hachitzona sheba mehashpa'ata hamisoava shel hagoyim asher lo yadu et Hashem ubishmo lo karau. But they were just influenced by a Gentile world around them, and there was a lot of pollution. There was a lot that covered their soul, but within their soul was a great yearning and a great faith in God. So I want to share with you what Rav Kook is referring to. He speaks about two individuals, and it's found in the Bereshis Rabbah. Go to the bottom of the page 1, and Rav Kook is citing this source. This is Midrash Rabbah from Bereshis, from Parshas Toldos, and it tells a story of a man by the name of Yosef Meshita, or Meshuta, and Yakum Isurot. So let's begin with the story. We'll tell one story of Yosef Meshita. I'm going to read it to you from the Midrash. This fellow, Yosef Meshita, it could be that he came from Shita, Meshita, was not, this is the bottom, I'm looking at the bottom of page 1. Yosef Meshita, I'm going to read to you the Midrash, the story that Rav Kook is referring to. So he rebelled against Judaism. He was not an observant Jew, and he actually took the side of the enemy. He became friends with the enemy. So says the Midrash, and if you want to just follow along with me, I'm 3 lines down. Yosef Meshita b'shah shebikshu sonim likanes laharabayit. Yosef Meshita, when they were ready, the enemies were ready to enter the Beit HaMikdash. Amru yikanes behem ubahem tchila. Let's find a Jew that will first go into the Beit HaMikdash. We don't want to be the first to step into the Beit HaMikdash. We don't know exactly what's going to happen. Let's find somebody. And who did they find? They found this person, Yosef Meshita, that he was going to go in. Amrin la, they said to him, I'm on the second column, Ol umada'at mapik didach. Go into the Beit HaMikdash, and whatever it is that you take out from the Beit HaMikdash will be yours. It will belong to you. Nichnas, he went in, v'hotzi menorah shel zahav. Well, what did he choose when he went in the Beit HaMikdash? Well, there was a big golden menorah, and that's what he carried out. Not sure how he was able to carry the menorah himself, but yeah, he carried the menorah outside the Beit HaMikdash. When he came out, Amru lo, ein darko shel hedjot lishtamesh bazo. They said to him, you know what, it's not really appropriate that a Jew should be using the menorah. Give us the menorah. You go in a second time, and you can find something, and whatever it is that you want to take will be yours. Okay, top of page 2. Ella ul zman tinyanus. Go a second time, umad ad mapik, and that which you take, didach, will belong to you. V'lo kibel alav. At that point, he said, I am no longer entering the Beit HaMikdash. Now, this is somebody who was kofir. This is somebody who rejected, rebelled against Judaism. And here he is saying, I will not enter the Beit HaMikdash. Amar Rabbi Pinchas, natnu lo mechas gimel shani v'lo kibel alav. They offered him 3 years of taxes that they would give him to go into the Beit HaMikdash a second time, but he did not accept it upon himself. Amar, he said, this Yosef, lo dai shichasti lelokai pamachad. Is it not enough that I angered God one time? Ella she'achisenu pam shniya, that I should anger God a second time. Ma asulo, what did they do to him? Natinu oto bechamor, they placed him, says here, on a carpenter's bench, shel charashim v'hayu min nasrim oto, and they began to saw his body, to cut his body into pieces. Hayam mitzavach, at that moment, this Yosef, again, who was not a religious Jew, who rejected, who was a kofar, who rebelled against Judaism, he called out, Oi, oi, or Vai, oi, shichasti libori. He cried out and he said, woe, oh, that I angered my Creator. So this is the story that Rav Kook is referring to. how somebody who, it appears, yes, that they rebel against Judaism, and yet at a moment of stress, a moment where they're challenged, that love of God and that belief in God came out. And he says that that's true of every single Jew, that embedded within every Jew is a faith that we have in Hashem. As I was reading the story, I was thinking about many of the hostages that came out and some of the stories around the hostages. Quote unquote, many of them were not religious, right? They were not brought up in religious homes. They did not wear a kippah necessarily. They're not Shomer Shabbos necessarily, many of them. But stories that came out of the faith that they had while they were in captivity and the faith that they found during that time. And this is what Rav Kook is suggesting, or what he's arguing, is that yes, within every Jew, within every soul, there is Emunah, that there is faith in God. I want to just read to you the following. This is from an article that appeared actually in Torah Tidbits last week, and it was in the Jerusalem Post. This is from Sivan Rachav Meir, who does a lot of writing and about stories of what's happening in the land of Israel. And she writes that not everybody is familiar with this part of the story of the hostages and the hostages coming back home, which thank God just happened a couple weeks ago. So she writes the following, and I'll share, very, very moving. She writes, Eitan Horn of Kibbutz Nir Oz, who returned from captivity, shared that it was specifically in Gaza that he fasted on Yom Kippur. He's 37 years old, and there, for the first time in his life, in Gaza, he observed the holy day properly. Seged Kelphone recounted that when he saw all the Hamas men on stage, all he wanted to do was climb on stage and shout out, Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. And now that he's home, he's able to say the Shema Yisrael freely with everyone around him. Bar Cooperstein said that the song that strengthened him most, and again, we're describing people that we don't necessarily think of as religious, the most observant Jews. Again, we see that they do have that, and that's what Rav Kook is teaching us, that every soul really does have within their soul a longing for Hashem, a devekus, and a great faith in God. Bar Cooperstein said that the song that strengthened him most and that he sang to himself over and over again in Gaza, in the tunnels, were Ve'afilu behastara shebetoch hastara bevadai gam sham nimtza Hashem yitbarach, which means even in the darkest places, when you don't feel God, when it seems that he is hiding, he is still there, present with you. Rabbi Nachman of Breslov wrote these words 200 years ago. They took on new meaning in the Hamas tunnels. And Ram Braslavsky shared that the terrorists offered to convert him to Islam, promising him more food and better conditions if he agreed. But he kept on telling them over and over, I am a strong Jew. And now facing the cameras, he said, I want people to understand that they are Jews, that they should do more mitzvot. Hamas did this to me only because I am a Jew. A Jew must know that he comes from greatness, that he's not like everyone else. Eliah Cohen, who returned from captivity several months ago, told how much he missed wearing tefillin. While held hostage by Hamas, he invented something both creative and moving. Every morning I would go to one side of the room and imagine putting on my tefillin. I would go through the whole process step by step in my imagination. Sometimes I could actually feel the tefillin on me. Omer Shem Tov said this week how much he misses the connection he felt with God when he was in captivity. The closeness, the sense that he was speaking and that God was with him listening. He described trying to rediscover that elevated feeling. As she writes, just a paragraph to close, all these remarkable stories are, of course, about them, but in truth, they are about us as well. They reveal the depth of the Jewish soul, the power of faith, and the holiness of Jewish identity. The entire world has just begun reading the Torah from Breshit. You heard this last week, back at the very beginning. We are all part of this story, and each of us can reflect, reach their own conclusions, and choose a small step forward, because it's not only them, it's us. They remind us who we really are. So that is, I think that very much captures what Rav Kook is suggesting here in this piece, and what the Gemara and what the Midrash speaks about of individuals that we wouldn't necessarily say are religious. And in this case, the story of Yosef Meshita, that he was a kofar, that he took the other side, that he joined the enemy, but at a moment of suffering, a moment where he had an epiphany, and he realized how much he really believed in God, how much he longed for God. This idea of Rav Kook, that when we speak about faith, we're talking about a faith that really is embedded within every soul, is something that the Baal HaTanya, that the first Lubavitcher Rebbe, writes about, and actually becomes a very important part of Chabad teachings. And I want to share with you the following. We know, by the way, that Rav Kook is very much influenced by Chabad as well. This is from Sefer, the book, the Tanya, the classic work, written by Rav Shner Zalman of Liadi. One of the celebrated passages, one of the famous passages, it's in Perek Yud-Chet. And let me just read these 3-4 lines. We can read them together. He writes the following. This is the founder of Chabad Chasidus, and he writes in the Tanya. This is the middle of page 2. Tzarich leidan Emunah. You must know the following. Those, and he's speaking to Emunah, those who believe in God, and to his students. Ki af mi shedato ksara b'yediat Hashem. Even somebody that doesn't understand very much about God. Ve'ein lo leiv lahavin b'gdulat ein sof baruch hu. And a person maybe doesn't have the background or doesn't have the ability to really understand the depths of what it means to believe in God, what it means to the whole conception of God. Leholim imenu dechilu rechimu afilu b'mocho utvunato levad. Where a person's not able to conjure up feelings of awe and of fear of God. This is something that is close to every Jew. It's something that is embedded within every Jew. Every Jew has this potential and this yearning and desire to keep mitzvot and to study Torah. That everybody in their mouths and in their hearts, mamish, this is what every Jew really has deep down inside. Me'umka deliba, in the depth of every heart, be'emet la'amito, in absolute truth, with love and with fear. And here's the key line. And where is this love and faith in God? Shehi ahava misuteret. It's something that's hidden. It's something that's found in the depth. Shebelev klalut Yisrael. And every single Jew has it. So whether you've been taught it, Rabbi Soloveitchik, I think, would say you need a Masorah, you need somebody to teach it. Rav Kook says, you know what? It's there. It's part of the very makeup. It's part of the DNA of what it means to have a soul, what it means to have a neshama, that it's belev klalut Yisrael shehi Yerusha lanu me avotenu. This is something that we have received also as an inheritance, as part of the DNA going back to our forefathers, to Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, and Leah. This was the first Rebbe of Chabad. Just to share a story about Lubavitcher Rebbe. Lubavitcher Rebbe, Rabbi Menachem Mendel Schneerson, who was the 7th Rebbe, heard the story the other day. So one of the shlichim, he was in Australia. You know, as everybody here knows, they were sent, and they continue to be sent throughout the world. This was the shliach who was sent to Australia. Not easy to be that far from Crown Heights and from Brooklyn. The Rebbe's sending you to Australia, the other side of the world. And he was there for a number of years, and he came back to meet the Rebbe, to see the Rebbe again. This is in the early years. And he came back to the Rebbe, and he spoke to the Rebbe about the challenges, and imagine what it was like in the 50s and the 60s in Australia to be a Chabad shliach, very, very different today, to land there and to try to make an impact. And the Rebbe saw that it wasn't easy for him, and he was really struggling, like, in that role. He spoke, he gave him chizuk, and then they were ending the meeting. Now, this fellow was going back on a boat. I guess in those days, not everybody got on a flight. He was taking a boat back to Australia. The flight's quite long. Can't imagine how long it takes on a boat. And the Rebbe turns to him right before he leaves, and he says, well, what is it that you're going to do on the boat ride back, the many days, I don't know, maybe even weeks, to get back to Australia? So he said, I don't know, I'll do, what you're supposed to do. I'll learn a bit, and I'll daven every day, and, try to make the best of the time. So the Rebbe said the following: this is what I want you to do. I want you to pack up, when you're on the boat, I want you to pack up all of your anxieties, all your insecurities, all your questions. I want you to pack them up, and I want you to throw them overboard. I want you to throw them in the water. And when you come back to Australia, that I want you to believe in yourself, and I want you to believe that faith that you have in Hashem, that Hashem is going to help you. That's what I want you to do on your way back to Australia. So that's what the Rebbe taught that. Rav Kook is teaching that that faith in Hashem, that Emunah is there. The power that we have to believe in Hashem is there. It's embedded within our hearts. It's embedded within our neshama. What's interesting, and here we go to the top of page 3, this, I think of this as really like a Hasidic idea, like an idea that comes out of Rav Kook, and comes from sort of the more spiritual, the mystical tradition. But we have Rav Chaim Volozhin, who's part of what's called the Great Litvish tradition, where he writes the same idea. What's interesting, Pirkei Avos, it speaks about the tests of Avram Avinu. It says that Avram Avinu, Asara Nisyonot, Nitnasei Avram Avinu, that there were 10 tests that Avram went through in his life. This is the top of page 3. I have it here in translation. Our forefather Abram was tested with 10 trials. We're familiar with that. Rav Chaim Volozhin has a commentary on Pirkei Avos called Ruach Chaim, and he asks the following question. He says, we have other Mishnayot where it says Avraham, but it doesn't say Avraham Avinu. It says this is the only Mishnah in Pirkei Avos where it says Avraham Avinu. Why here does it say specifically Avinu, Avraham, our forefather? And Rav Chaim Volozhin gives the following answer. It says Avinu here to teach you that these 10 tests that he went through, that he established something within his soul that he passed on to generations afterwards. He's our forefather in a very, very deep way, that we have a piece of that neshama as well. We have part of that DNA that goes back to our Avinu. Just to read the following, the second paragraph, even the simplest, this is a translation of Rav Chaim Volozhin, even the simplest unlearned Jew is willing to sacrifice his life, al kiddush Hashem, to sanctify Hashem. In other words, just as Avram was willing to do that, in the second paragraph, page 3, under that 5:4, it's Parak Hey, Mishnah Daled. We inherited this talent from Avraham, who himself was thrown into a fire as a consequence of his faith, which we're reading this Shabbos, actually. Parshas Lech Lecha. Again, this story doesn't appear in the Torah itself, but the story of Kivshan Ha'esh. And why do we have, where does a Jew have that strength and that courage? It comes from Avraham Avinu, that we have it within us. And I'm going to ask you the following question. Where did we get the strength? And I think just about everybody in this room made Aliyah. We were not born here in Israel. For most of the people sitting in this room, where did we get that strength to make that decision to come to Israel? Where did it come from? Right? I look back and I think about, how did I do that? How did I get up with my wife and my family and to leave New York? I could still picture that scene of packing all of my books and packing everything in the house. And how did I make that decision? That's not an easy thing to do. So he writes the following. He writes, this is a translation of Chaim Volozhin, our willingness to abandon family and friends and move to the Holy Land. Where did we get the strength to do that? It's actually beyond just strength and courage. It's actually within us. It's actually is derived from Lech Lecha, Abraham's trial of leaving his home and moving to the Holy Land. That he was able to do that is something that we receive within the neshama, within the spiritual DNA of a Jew. Okay. So what does it mean? What does it mean when we think about this idea of faith and Emunah really being within us, that's embedded within our neshama? Sort of it's not an easy idea to grasp, kind of a very spiritual or metaphysical idea to say that faith is not something that we learn, it's something that is very much a part of us. I think one way of looking at that idea is to think about simple faith as well, what's called Emunah Pshuta. There was this faith that we learn, which is more sophisticated ideas about God. And then there's the idea of just what's within us, which is the simplicity of faith. And this is something that Rav Nachman of Breslov speaks about. And what we're about to read, I would say, is a line that everybody here knows, and it's been turned into a song as well. And it's probably maybe the most famous line of Rav Nachman of Breslov that he ever taught. He taught a lot, and here we are. Likutei Moharan. This is the great work of Rav Nachman of Breslov, Tanina Memches Beis, and he writes the following: Da Vida. Everyone needs to know, says Rav Nachman of Breslov, and he teaches, Sha'adam tzarich la'avor al gesher tsar me'od, that everybody needs to cross A narrow bridge. That's right. Kol ha'olam kulo. He doesn't have it that way, by the way. That's added in that song. So he writes just everybody, this is the language from, this is the original text. V'dash adam sarich la'avor al gesher tzar me'od, v'haklal v'ha'ikar. And what's essential and what is the general rule, so to speak, shelo yitpached klal. That's interesting also. I saw one of the commentaries says, it doesn't say yifached or yitpached. It says here yitpached, which means to cause undue fear or anxiety to oneself. Now, you're going to be afraid. In other words, when you face difficulty in life, right, and challenges in life, you're going to be afraid. But how do you assuage that fear? In other words, the fear is going to be there. Don't cause more fear than there needs to be. And the way to do that is with belief in Hashem. And the student of Rav Nachman of Breslov writes a work, Likutei Halachos, which is really based on his teachings. And he writes it in the following way. This is Rav Nassan of Nemirov, the way that he writes this teaching from his Rebbe. And I think it's just for our learning this morning, I think it's worthwhile just to see the language. Ha'ikar be'avodat Hashem. What's essential in avodat Hashem, shelo yitpached adam klal. A person should not cause, again, you could translate this, cause fear that is not necessary fear at all. Fear we're going to have, right? Fear we're going to have. When you have to go to the dentist and the fear is going to be there, but how do you get through it? Right, so you get through it with that belief in Hashem. And he quotes his Rabbi Nachman of Breslov, in this world, we all are going to be crossing narrow bridges. Right, there are going to be narrow bridges in life. It's not going to be easy to walk that bridge. Do not be afraid. Do not cause more fear. Believe in Hashem. La'avor al hagesher tsar b'shalom. How is it that we're going to make our way across these narrow bridges in life? B'li pachad, without fear. Hu ha'emunah ha'gadosha. It's the holiness of faith, of having faith and a simple faith in Hashem. And here I want to share with you the following from Rav Kook. Rav Kook, and I have it in translation. This is from a work called Shmona Kvatzim. That's the S and the K at the end, Shmona Kvatzim. And he speaks about the faith of a child. The faith of a child, the purity of a child, and this is translation. And I thank Rabbi Schwartz, who has a beautiful 2 volumes of translations. Some people have asked me over the last couple of years what to read in Rav Kook. If they want to start Rav Kook, I always recommend his books.
What's his full name?
His name is Ari Zev Schwartz, and he has 2 volumes. One is called the Spiritual Revolution of Rav Kook, and I don't remember, the second one also is a very similar, The Spiritual Wisdom of Rav Kook, something like that. Very, very, very worthwhile. So here he has the following. The purity of a child contains within it universal purity. The desire for a life of natural purity pulsates within a child without any dirt or contamination. The holy expression of a pure child includes within it the most powerful and clear spark of the idealism of life, and through this holy expression is able to bring the life of the world to its actualization. Therefore, the world is sustained on the breath of children. The Gemara in Shabbos, the world is sustained on the breath of children, meaning that pure faith is the foundation of the world. The thought, and one more quote from Rav Kook, the thoughts of faith, the illuminating awareness, the divine greatness, the relationship to God, the certainty of God, the depth of purity and honesty, these are all qualities of a child. And if you turn now to the top of page 4, Rabbi Soloveitchik has a beautiful vort, a very beautiful insight. Again, a parsha that we're going to read soon about the life of Sarah. This is actually the parsha where Sarah's life comes to a close, Chayei Sarah. We're all familiar with the opening of the parsha, where it says, Vayihiyu Chayei Sarah. These were the years of Sarah's life. Mea shana ve'esrim shana ve'sheva shanim. 100 years, 20 years, and 7 years. Everybody asked the question, right, why is it broken down in each part? Why not just say 127 years? So Rabbi Soloveitchik gives the following answer. And here are the words of Rabbi Soloveitchik. The idealism of youth quite often shines through the eyes of the gray beard. In fact, great people are sometimes great children. They are rich and multi-talented because of their age. They are beautiful because of their honesty and sincerity. Sarah was concurrently 7, 20, and 100 years. She was simultaneously very old and very young, representing the aged, the adult, and the child. So according to Rabbi Soloveitchik, why does it say that she was 120 and 7? Because when she was 100, she was also 20, and she was also 7. That she never lost that naivete, the purity of being a child, the faith, just that pure faith of a child that knows nothing else other than loving their mother, right? Loving their father, holding on, a child. And that childish faith, or childlike is a better word, childlike faith, is something that we need to have as well. That's what Kook says. That's what Rabbi Soloveitchik says. When we talk about Emunah, we talk about an Emunah that's embedded within us. I think one way of thinking about that is just the simple faith in Hashem that we need to have. I think it's true looking back at the last 2 years with all the challenges and all the death and of soldiers and of hostages and everything that was so difficult and all the sirens. In those times, we really need just that simple faith in God, right? I believe in you, Hashem, and I believe that there's hashgacha, there's providence, that is the hand of Hashem, even though I don't know it, but as a child, just to say, I believe, without anything fancy, without any of the sophistication. There's a lot of sophistication around it as well. And what does it mean, hashgacha pratis? And what does it mean that God oversees? And what does it mean that God knows the future? But putting all of that aside, that there's a place, and Rav Kook emphasizes that, who's the brilliant Rav Kook, and Rabbi Soloveitchik emphasizes as well, and Rav Nachman of Breslov, right? The idea of just the simple faith, that there's a time for that simple faith, and just to kind of be able to retrieve that faith from within us, to turn to that simple faith, especially in times where we are challenged. There was a great rabbi who lived not far from here, Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, Zecher Tzadik Livracha, Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, who lived a few blocks from here. And so he had the interpretation of the following pasuk. This is a pasuk that we say when the Torah is taken out, V'atem hadvekim b'Hashem Elokeichem, chayim kulchem hayom, which means that every person is davek, that all of us cling to Hashem, and then we say, chayim kulchem hayom. Now, he said, many people ask the question, well, can you really feel that closeness to Hashem? Is that really possible for like the typical person? I understand like tzaddikim can kind of get there, but how does the average person feel that sense of dvekus, of clinging to God and faith in God? And he said that the pasuk itself is teaching us that everyone can do it. Again, what's the language of the pasuk? Va'atem hadvekim b'Hashem Elokeichem chayim. Chayim means in your life, in your own life, it's something that you can do. Kulchem. Kulchem means that every single person has the ability to do it. And what is hayom? Chayim kulchem hayom. It means today. Today, right now, that we can do it as well. It's not something that requires, to some degree, it doesn't require work. It just requires that simple faith that we have in Hashem that's embedded within us from Avraham Avinu and that Hashem has given us. Okay, two other sources that I'd like to share with you. And I was actually walking from the new OU office. I walked from the office to the class this morning. And yeah, it's a nice walk, it's a 45, 50 minute walk. Yeah, it was good. It would take double the time on a bus with all the construction. So I decided to walk. So the walk is through Mea Sharim. So what did I see in Mea Sharim for the first time this morning? I saw that the oil is out, that they're selling for Hanukkah, that the wicks are out. They're bringing them out. It's time. We're getting close. We're just about, 5-6 weeks away. I'm waiting to see the Sufganiyot. I don't think I've seen them yet, but we're getting close. What? You saw them? I'm sure they're out. You had one already. Okay. So I want to just, one quick idea, and it's a Hanukkah, Rav Kook on Hanukkah, but it's really, it highlights this very beautiful idea. What's the story of Hanukkah? So it's in a few lines in the Gemara, and I'll just read to you the lines in the Gemara again. Good preparation. We're preparing early for Hanukkah. It says, Keshegavru beis Chashmonai v'nitzchum. when the house of the Chashmonaim, this is the middle of 2, this is quoting from the Gemara in Shabbos, Daf Chav Aleph, when they overcame the Greeks, but kuvelo matzu elapachecha, they found only one jug, shel shemesh ha'emunach bechotamo shel Kohen Gadol, and on it there was the seal of the Kohen Gadol. V'lo hayabo elo la'adlik yom echad, there wasn't enough oil except for a single day. V'nase bones v'dliku mimenu shivat yamim. Actually, it says 7 more days. Interesting. Some Gerson in the Gemara says 8 days. Here it says v'dliku mimenu shivat yamim. There's the whole story. That's the Gemara, by the way. That's the Gemara. So Rav Kook says, what is the symbolism of this story? The symbolism of the story is that within every Jew, there's also that pach shemen. What does it represent? That with everything that is whirling around us, and all the different influences. And sometimes we may forget, and the Jew forgets, and the Jewish people forgets just that the simplicity of faith in Hashem, that just like that Pach Shemen that had the seal of the Kohen Gadol, within the neshama of every Jew, there is the seal of the Kohen Gadol. We are Kohen Gadol-like, and we have a pure oil within us. We have that purity of faith, that purity of Emunah. And that's what he says, and I'll read to you the last 4 lines in Rav Kook. This is from his Ein Hayah. Chen yesh b'chol adam. I'm reading, if you want to see the words of Rav Kook, 4 lines up, 5 lines up, right in the middle of the line. Chen yesh b'chol adam Yisrael tzad kiuna. Every single Jew has an aspect of Kohen. Every single Jew has a little bit of a Kohen within them. Mipnei shebichlalam hema mamlechet kohanim v'gad kadosh. We're all part of a nation called the mamlechet kohanim. Hatshuka haprimit, that every single Jew has a tshuka. What's a tshuka? What? A passion. Good, a passion, a desire. There's an inner desire and a passion, the gedushat hachayim, for a holiness of life, uledata Torah, to know the Torah, v'lalechet b'drachea, and to walk in the ways of the Torah. He ginuza. It's found deep, be'omek halev ha'Yisraeli. There's not a Jew that does not have it. Every single Jew, and each of us have it as well. We have a neshama that is a Kohen-like neshama, that is a pure neshama, that is, it's like the purity of the oil, and it's going to light. It's going to light up. At times, it diminishes a bit. At times, it's covered a bit. But there's tremendous potential of love of Hashem, closeness of Hashem, and emunah of Hashem. Yes, please.
I find this very idealistic.
It is very idealistic, yeah.
I think I'm obsessed with this relation of the Jewish people for 50 years. And I studied it, and there's a midrash that says, God Hashem says, if only they rejected me but kept my Torah.
Yes.
I think there were tens of thousands of Chiloni Israeli, secular Israelis, don't believe in God.
Yes.
But they're proud Jews.
Yes.
They love the ethical, moral teachings of God.
So that's that neshama. So in other words, they haven't learned.
It's not Emunah Hashem.
It's not emunah Hashem.
It's love being
Just-
proud Jews.
Okay. So I think I think your question is a great question. It's something that I thought about as I was learning this material as well. I think Rabbi Soloveitchik would agree with you and would say that yearning is not really a yearning for God per se. It's really a yearning for morality and ethics. Rav Kook would say no, that the soul of a Jew has this dimension. At the very core, at the very essence of every Jew, there is a neshama that is a piece of Hashem, is a spark of Hashem, and we yearn for Hashem and we have faith in Hashem. That is a more spiritual, maybe Kabbalistic, mystical idea. Rav Kook believes it. The Balatanya believes it as well. The founder of Chabad. And that, by the way, we mentioned this last, that's why Chabad will say, come here, put on a pair of tefillin, because I know the moment that you put on that tefillin, you're going to feel it. Your soul connects to it. And a woman that's going to light candles Friday night that never lit candles, it's going to light up the soul. In other words, that energy is there. Yeah, I'll tell you a story. I was a rabbi in Mount Kisco, New York. I don't know if anybody knows where that is. Mount Kisco, New York is in Upper Westchester. And one of my congregants, Zichrono Livracha, blessed memory, his name was Lou Soloff. You probably don't know that name. He was part of a band called Blood, Sweat, and Tears. Anybody know that band? Good. And he was on the album. He was part of the band. They had that number one song, or Spinning Wheel. Remember Spinning Wheel? Okay, good. So he was a great trumpet player. He's a world-class trumpet player. So his name was Lou Soloff. So one day he came over to me, not a Shomer Shabbos, not a religious fellow per se, and he came over to me and said, my name is Lusolov, but it's really Soloveitchik, my last name. That my family changed the name at some point. So his name was Soloveitchik. So I said, you come from the Soloveitchik family. And Soloveitchiks are Leviim, by the way. They're all Levi. He himself was a Levi. And I said that the genius that you have, that you're a world-class trumpet player, you're a famous trumpet player, is because you come from the line of Leviim. You know what Leviim did in the Beit HaMikdash? They played the trumpet. They played music. They are great musicians. And I said that you have the neshama, that you have the DNA that goes all the way back to the original Leviim as well. That's what I told him. I don't think he bought it. I don't think he believed it. But that's what I said, like as a way to be mechazek him. What did he say? I mean, he liked the idea. I don't know. But that's the way that Rav Kook and the way the Balatanya, the way that they see a Jewish person, that a Jew has a neshama that is connected, number one, going back to Avraham, a DNA that we go back of somebody that was willing to give their life, Mesiras Nefesh, and belief in Hashem, and that even in a deeper sense, that Hashem creates the soul of a Jew in a unique way, that we have a spark, we have a nitzot, a spark of godliness within us that connects us with Hashem. And that's the faith that we have. That's the vekas that we have with Hashem, whether we learn it or not. And I think those stories that we shared of hostages coming out and they're yearning for something Jewish. The question is, where is that coming from? Of all things that they could say when finally they're freed after hundreds of days, that I want tefillin, that I want Shabbos, that I want tzitzis. Like where does that come from? And let me just end with the following. You can look at the last source on your own. And just one other, what I saw this week, and I'll just 1 minute just to close, is there was a woman who lost her husband. Her name was Rachel Goldberg. Rachel Goldberg. Not Hirsch's mother, Rachel Goldberg, right? Rachel Goldberg, she's a widow, and her husband, Avi Goldberg, was killed in Lebanon as part of the wars of the past. And she got married this past week. And she has young children. She actually lives not that far from me. I see her. What? She has many children and young children as well. I saw this beautiful clip that as she was walking to the chuppah, getting married 1 year later after her husband was killed, with all the children behind her, all of her children walking her to the chuppah. And people were just talking about the faith of this woman a year later after losing her husband, to be able to get up, literally to get up from Shiva and from that morning and to marry. This is actually, he taught in a school called Himmelfarb, and this is another rabbi who teaches in Himmelfarb. He lost his wife a number of years ago, and they started dating, and here, just a year later, that they married. And when you talk about the faith of OUisrael, right, the faith, just that pure faith in Hashem, to be able to start again after tragedy, after challenges, after trauma. I think it's something that this is what Rav Kook sees in OUisrael, sees in every Jew. We need to see it in ourselves, right? That through getting through difficult times, that we have the potential, that we have it within us to do that, to get through the most difficult of times with faith in Hashem. As Rav Nachman says, Gesher Tsar Ma'od, a lot of narrow bridges to get across, but we can do that because we hold on to a faith in Hashem and because we have it within us. And as Rav Kook teaches and Chabad teaches, we also need to see it in one another, right? To see that neshama, to see that potential of faith, like even when it's not apparent, right? Even where it's what's called the kofar and the rebel, the one that's rejecting God. No, it's not true. You believe. Okay, we have to find a way to share that in a way that's going to speak to you. And one last word. We just started last night and this morning. Tain, tal, umatar, livracha. The winter season is now here. We're praying for rain. With that rain, we should pray for a lot of shefa bracha, that Hashem should bring down, have faith that Hashem in this season should bring a lot of rain, physical rain to the land of Israel, but should shower us with a lot of bracha because of our faith in Hashem. All right, we will stop here. Thank you very much for joining us. Yesher koach. Everyone have a good week.